and welcome to the Bluegrass Unlimited magazine weekly Bluegrass Music Podcast. Bluegrass Unlimited is a monthly publication of the Bluegrass Music Hall of Fame and Museum located in Owensboro, Kentucky. Learn more at bluegrasshall.org. I'm your podcast host, Dan Miller. This week we'll be featuring banjo performing and recording artist and banjo instructor, Ross Nickerson. I'll talk with Ross about his career in bluegrass and the various books, videos, and workshops that he has created for banjo players. I hope you enjoy the Ross Nickerson podcast. Hey Ross, welcome to the Bluegrass Unlimited podcast.
Nice to talk to you again, Dan. Great to be here.
Yeah, well, our March issue, we list all the workshops and camps that are going on during the year and put all that information out there for folks. And so we like to highlight teachers who teach people how to play bluegrass music. And you're one of the guys. I mean, you've had a website since 2001 called banjoteacher.com. You can't get any more descriptive than that. And so just want to talk to you about how you got started in playing and performing and teaching. And I know you've got a lot of products out there. You've got a website that has a lot of stuff on it that people can buy, books, DVDs, online lessons and things like that. And so I just wanted to talk to you all about that so people will know what you're up to.
Okay. Well, I got started playing banjo. I was 16. A friend of mine talked me into buying one, and I was, mildly interested. But then I went to Union Grove Bluegrass Festival.
Okay.
And I thought we just went for fun. This is like 1974, I think. 73 maybe. 73. And I just said, well, sort of, everybody was getting so rowdy over the bluegrass music, it sort of appealed to my teenage sensibilities. I said, well, this is what it's all about. This sounds really fun. So I got really inspired to learn banjo and learn how to play fast, because I kind of figured that, boy, if you can't play fast, you really can't. You're kind of out of the loop there,
Yeah.
So I worked on that, and I went back the next year and I made some friends down there with them and a couple of people from my hometown. We started a band, and then the next year we went down there and played, and we got in the finals of the band contest, and we got to play Saturday night. So I sort of accomplished my goal of within a, and I learned to play pretty quick, and so I, and we had a lot of drive to do things, and I practiced a lot.
Yeah, where were you from?
What's that?
Where were you from?
I'm originally from New England area.
Okay.
And I moved to Colorado in 1979. But that band I was in, we played out in Boulder in 1975, 76, and 76, 77. There was all kinds of music going on out there. So I really, a lot of my inspiration came from living out west.
Okay.
Of course, in the mid-70s, for those of you that are around my age, you remember, but the 70s was really popular with bluegrass. I mean, you could play, it wouldn't matter if you were in Cape Cod or, where you were. Bluegrass is really popular. So we used to have, we played, actually, the first group I played in, we played out in Martha's Vineyard at this one place, kind of as a house band, and we played like crazy out there. And it was a popular group, and we had a lot of fun. And then went to Boulder in the winter.
Okay. Well, one article I read said you were inspired by the Will the Circle Be Unbroken album. At what point did you hear that?
Well, I had a girlfriend in high school that actually had that.
Okay.
And I started listening to that, and that was another big inspiration for me. I listened to Earl Scruggs. I mean, Earl Scruggs is just one of those, for all banjo players, I'm sure we all kind of, a lot of us, or most of us can concur that you hear that and it just hooks you and you just want to do it. So I got really hooked on that, and I would listen to the record a lot and start to learn to play. And one of the things we did out in Boulder when I was out there, we played at this sort of, what we call it nowadays, we call it open mic, but it was what they called it a hoot night.
Okay.
And and we at this place called the Oxford Hotel. So we went down and played, and we were a 5-piece band, and the guy ended up hiring us to open for Norman Blake for 4 nights straight, 2 shows a night. That's how popular, bluegrass is really going. And then the last night, John McEwen, who was playing up the street of this place called Ebbets Field back then in Denver, came down, and of course I've been, dreamed about this record or whatever, it's just the whole, sort of inspiration of the whole thing. And all of a sudden he's there. I thought Norman Blake was in the record too.
Yeah.
And I walked up to him and go, hi, I'm blah, 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 kind of the starstruck thing. And the first thing out of his mouth was, "You want to pick?" So we went up in the hotel room and played with him and John McEwen, and that was just a really big deal for me at the time. I'd only been playing banjo really about a year and a half at that point. And,
wow.
We were we had singers and we could play fast. We were playing, cover stuff of the day, the Newgrass Revival, Old and Away.
Yeah.
Some instrumentals, Girls Breakdown, things like that,
Yeah. And what was that band called?
That band was called the Condor Brothers.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how long did you work with those guys?
From about age 17 to 21. We took a few breaks.
Okay.
Then I moved to Colorado permanently in 79. So most of my playing really has been out west. Like I lived in Arizona, Tucson area. That's where, you and I have met there. And I played with Peter McLaughlin a lot in Tucson.
Right.
That was a big, he was also a big influence and inspiration on me. The national flat picking champion. So playing with him, and then we were associated with some festivals out there back in those days with the band with Ron Block and Mike Bubb and
Weary Hearts,
Rich Paul Starry and those guys, and we were all friends with them, and we all went to Winfield together one year, and so they were a big inspiration. And I got into a band, and I started this band in Tucson just to join, just to go to play in the band contest at the Telluride Bluegrass Festival.
Uh-huh.
And we ended up winning the contest, the band contest. So that turned into a kind of a big deal. And that band, we auditioned for Tokyo, to play Tokyo Disneyland,
uh-huh.
which was, they put in the old magazine, Press magazine. They had a 5-city audition. You could audition in California, New York, or Chicago, and L.A., and some other location, I've forgotten, and maybe Texas or something. And we got the job, so we went there, and then the next year we got a contract at Opryland.
Wow.
And I lived in Nashville for a little while.
And this was with the same band that you put together to play in the Telluride band contest?
In Tucson, yeah.
And you guys...
Peter wasn't in that band. He was in a different band. I was in with him. But
okay.
And that led to some of the connections I made with some of the records I've done.
Uh-huh.
And recordings and stuff. My CD that I did with, called Let's Kick It, that I did with Blue Highway, when I lived in Nevada, I used to play with Rob Ike really frequently, because that was sort of that. He was living in Davis. That was before he moved to Nashville, and he was from Davis in Sacramento area.
Yeah.
So we were sort of playing the local festivals, and he came out of Tucson with us one time to play, and he was really easy to add. And we all knew how good he was, but he really what is he, like 16, 17 time Dobro Player of the Year?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, he's phenomenal. Yeah. So how long were you with that group that went from Tucson to Japan to Nashville? How many years did that span?
Maybe 5 years.
5 years, okay.
So I lived in Nashville for about a year and a half, but I had 2 kids in Tucson, and I got really just kind of homesick and just didn't want to start a whole new life, I mean, I wanted to pursue my was sensible with music and stuff, but it was too difficult for me to stay there. It was a really good experience for me, but it was just too far from home at the time,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Didn't I read you went to flight school at some point?
Yeah. Well, I appreciate these questions. That's actually my intention in life, to be a pilot.
Okay.
The only reason why I got back into music really was I went to flight school and I started flight instructing, and we considered moving back east again, but the weather's not good for year-round flying there, really. So
Okay.
we moved to Tucson, and I didn't really get lucky up to that point. We're just picking up flying jobs or whatever, but there was no flying work. And this is 1982.
Okay.
I'm aging myself a little bit, but yeah, and actually, so I put up a notice for giving banjo lessons. Back to the reason why you called me, but I've always enjoyed teaching, and like I was talking about before, I learned pretty quick. So it was always something I could show somebody. So
Okay.
teaching's always just kind of come naturally for me, and I also learned a lot from teaching. So it was always a good. I'm kind of aggressive player, and until I have sort of forced to sit down and think it through and explain it, I didn't really necessarily understand what I was doing.
I see.
When I started teaching, I started, sort of for their benefit, made me sit still and really think it through a little bit.
Okay. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, but anyways, I picked up a student whose mom worked at this place where they stored jets and aircraft at this old military base. So I started giving lessons to some mechanics out there, but I wasn't getting much flying work. And I ended up with the banjo in Tucson. I got hired, and everybody, they all needed me. So
Okay.
one thing kept leading to another, and then the flying thing just kind of fizzled a bit because there really wasn't any money or opportunity for me out there.
Okay.
And I just made the best of it.
Yeah.
I just figured, well, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to, contribute as much as I can to the community I lived in, and teaching and playing places, and,
And when did you write your first book?
When I got back from Japan, I did a book on Scruggs style.
Okay.
And the reason I did that was because I was teaching so many people from the Scruggs book. We call it the Scruggs book, but Earl Scruggs and the Five-String Banjo book. But in that book, it was a bit hard to read or digest, and in those days, a lot of people that were really inspired to play the banjo, just their dreams kind of got shattered because they couldn't understand the book, and it also didn't have a recording of the songs. It was more of like get the record, we can hear it, but of course, that's also fast.
Right.
And hard for people to pick up. That being said, I had some shortcomings, but really, we're all really grateful for that book, because if it wasn't for that, we would have really been lost.
Yeah.
But it wasn't the most beginner-friendly book, and so a lot of my lessons would be sort of explaining or rewriting the tablature in there and then recording it for the students.
Okay.
So I recorded 6 of the songs, had a medium and fast speed. Of course, medium when I was in my 20s, I later learned that that's too fast to record even for that, but they're somewhat slower than they normally recorded, and then up to the tempo. And then I kind of walked through the tablature and explained, some of the nuances of the different parts of it. And to me, that I really felt like if somebody learned and understood that, then they'd understand the technique of five-string banjo playing, because the technique of the stroke style is brilliant, and it's, once you understand it, it's very applicable to a lot of different things, and it also just works really well. And you can really grow with it, which has been proven by all the great players that have pushed the limits of it.
Yeah. And do you still sell that book, or did it become?
Yeah, I can still sell it. We still, I started a website. I did another one called How to Build Your Speed on the Banjo. Always thought that was another I'm kind of a bottom line kind of guy, but if you learn correct stroke style technique, and you also have to learn to play up tempo, or you can't play in a band really. I mean, you can, but I mean, it does hold you back. I don't mean it like that. I just mean it's sort of you should practice it.
Yeah.
You know, how to get up to tempo. You can't just, and it's because the whole sort of debate, or however I explained it in the book, was, speed's not everything, and you really have to play carefully and in time and all this kind of stuff. But if you don't try to play fast, or you don't push yourself to play fast, it's not going to just drop.
Right.
Stop, from playing over and over slow. You have to be willing to make some mistakes and be sloppy until you can smooth it out, things like that.
Yeah, one of the things I read in a article that you has done about you, I think you were on the cover of Banjo Newsletter years ago, and one thing you were recommending is playing things in practice more difficult than you're going to play them on stage. So that I guess the theory there is that when you're on stage, you're a little bit more relaxed because you're not trying to play your most difficult stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's when you play your best. If you don't want to be playing at no matter what level you're at, you don't want to be playing at your top level or your top speed. Sometimes people will say to me, "Geez, you're playing so fast, you look like you have to sleep," or something. And I say, well, that's because I'm not playing as fast as I can. I can actually play faster than this, or I pick faster than this. So I'm still relaxed. So you want to get, and that comes through when you're playing too. You don't want any instrument. All the guys that we listen to and look up to and stuff, they are very relaxed when they play, even though when they're playing fast, it's just dumb. But when they're maybe backstage or jamming with them, they can play a lot more difficult techniques.
I see.
They just don't apply to the music that they're playing, the traditional music.
Okay.
So that might be an example of them playing at a more relaxed level. They're not pushing the song or the techniques,
Right. And
but when people learn how to play their stuff, if you're not careful, if you don't push past that, that might be the limit of your ability.
I got it. Yeah.
Not the limit of their ability.
Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah. Something like that.
And so you basically did these first two books just to have something for your students. And how were you marketing?
Yeah, and we sold them newsletter. Sold them mail order through Banjo newsletter.
Okay.
And we sold in the hundreds if we were lucky. It wasn't a big deal, but it was a big deal to me to help people, and also even just that extra income was great,
Yeah.
But then I think it probably might be interesting to people just how the internet changed things and how much that made a huge difference for both me and students too.
Yeah.
I moved to the Washington, D.C., Baltimore area in 2000, and there's enough population, enough interest around there that I developed a full roster of students.
Okay.
So that was my only, I didn't have to work another job or anything. So once that happened, and then I also got really interested in web development, even just aside from music stuff. And at one point I was learning how to build the websites, and I went, oh, I gotta think of something that I can sell, But I'm gonna try to dream up something, and it was right in front of my face,
Right.
I do what I do, and I bought the domain name, and then I started to build a web page, and I had to sort of fill the spots in the website, and I had those two books, the stroke style one and the speed one.
Right.
And I knew how to write a beginning book because I've been writing beginning stuff, and I did one for a college class I taught one time. So I kind of knew how I would do it, but I was just filling space. I put a beginning book up there, and I didn't know. And someone bought one.
Uh-huh.
I was like, whoa, There's people out there. I didn't. It's surprised. And I'm like, oh no, now I got to finish it. So I spent the next couple of weeks, at the time at Kinko's, copying and pasting tablature stuff and recording a CD, and and I sold my first beginning book, and then I really started to sell a lot of those. So I kept revising that and just making it more professional, the whole product,
I see.
And I recorded a DVD for it over there, and where you were at the time, and the same person that you were working with your flat picking DVDs.
Yeah.
France.
Yeah.
And so I started, everything just started getting, as I sold and started to get some income from it, I just started building and getting, improving it and writing more books. And the other thing we were doing, my original inspiration for the website was that if I could teach people online, I'd never have trouble finding students.
Right.
But I was thinking of sort of a one-on-one thing.
Okay.
But a friend, I forget exactly how the connection happened, but she knew how to make streaming videos.
Oh, okay.
So we'd film them on the old camcorders, and then we'd turn them into streaming videos. This is like 2003
okay.
or something. And so I could use really the same type of approach I was doing with the more amateur DVDs I was making for my books at the time, and then turning them into streaming lessons.
I see.
And we started to sell those online, and we came up with a way to, the password protected thing and all this kind of stuff. So, and those are catching on really good, and that was exciting. But then sometime around 2006 or 7 or so, I had a student email me and said, "Hey, I just saw one of your lessons on YouTube."
Oh.
And I go, "Oh, what's that? What's YouTube?" And it was just somebody that bought one of my lessons, and he just kept posted it
right
on YouTube. So at first my thought was, oh, we sold those.
Right, sure. You're getting ripped off.
In the old days,
yeah.
Before this whole thing blew up. So and I thought about it. I said, oh, yeah, you can leave it up there, But it was, what he did was he posted the part where I'm demonstrating the song, but there's no music, there's no tablature that goes with it or anything. So it's kind of a half lesson, which
right.
in a way I don't like, because it doesn't appear, it's not a very good lesson really if you don't have the music.
Sure.
I don't really sit there and explain how to play it. So if someone saw that on YouTube, they'd be going, well, it doesn't even give you the music with it, or how are you supposed to know how to play it? All it is, So I eventually had to take it down.
Okay.
Just because I didn't want to, think. But I think that might be kind of interesting to people that, everything with music and technology, the advancements of technology, unfortunately, including my business, in the wake of that, it can change the landscape of how people do business.
Oh, sure.
So at first, YouTube was kind of like, oh, that's just a bunch of amateurs teaching, we're professional teachers, and if you want to learn it right, learn somebody that's, experienced with me and this type of thing. But, as it's developed, it's become, it's become more and more, it's not all like that. It's, in fact, perfect, so rather than I do kind of wish I embraced YouTube a little bit more, but at first I thought it was just, now I pretty much use my YouTube site to demonstrate the banjos that we sell on the website.
Oh, I see.
I don't really embrace it as a teaching platform, because it's, so there are certainly plenty of people that give more content and more lessons on YouTube than I do.
Yeah.
Because I'm in the business of it, but I don't know. What I'm trying to say, it's just, I love YouTube for that too. I've been playing bass in a worship band, and they also have the top 40 rock band, the same group, and I'm playing bass, and so I have to learn to play bass on a bunch of old 60s and 70s songs, and I just type it into YouTube, and boom,
yeah,
I got my bass on it. It's handy.
Yeah.
I don't have to sit and figure out the record or anything.
Yeah, it's handy.
So I learned how to play bass in like no time.
Right.
So anyways.
In that Banjo newsletter article, you talked about how you taught people to learn from tab, starting with the chords and a rhythmic roll. And can you kind of sort of explain that to folks? Because I think that was interesting of how to approach learning a song by tablature.
Yeah, I do think that's huge because it's an interesting phenomenon what's going on. But when I teach my workshops, the people that come to my workshops, they're learning from tab, and that can be okay. But teachers from my generation didn't anticipate this. This is the way it looks to us, right? We're learning to play without the tab, and then we learn to play, and then the tab comes along. We're like, oh man, this is so much easier.
Right.
You know, that's how he does it. Oh, he's playing open string there. It's like, it's like, and so tab, like, in a way, just, launched a ton of stuff for us. But we could already play. Yeah.
Right.
So we just used tab to learn the right way to play it, or to learn a more advanced song, or learn more songs,
Right.
But if you are starting with tab, it starts to become like this paint by numbers thing. And for banjo players in particularly, because they don't learn the chord progression first. Like if you play guitar, or you play mandolin, or even bass, or any of that, first thing you do is be able to strum through the chord progression. Well, banjo players don't do that. They start following numbers around.
Right.
And then they've got no sense of the arrangement of the song, and another thing with banjo, because of the quarter note and eighth note limitations, that's all you can play. If they leave out a number, or if they leave, they don't realize the importance of that one beat that's missing.
Right.
Now you're going to be in the wrong spot. So so I end up having to go back and teach them how to play, to learn, use tablature for what it's good for, which is a great cheat sheet and a good way to learn the right technique, not have to kind of work it out off the record or pick it up from somebody,
Yeah.
at the back out at the Bluegrass Festival or something. But I'm going to try it. So what I do when I teach a student at home with that is, the first thing I do is I make sure they can count the time of the tab. Make sure they know how to count it. The measures, and make sure they know where the quarter notes and the eighth notes are. And then I familiarize them with the left hand moves. And I spend a little bit of time getting a little muscle memory repetition, so they know what they can anticipate where their fingers are going to be going with the left hand. They're usually pretty good pickers by then, because once a lot of people play banjo, they're really inspired to learn to pick. They spend a lot of time practicing it. So the rest of it is the part that needs to be paid more attention to. And so once I do that, then I'll go to the hardest part of the song and spend some time with that first before I try to sight read it or anything.
I see.
Because it's always a part of the song where people get tripped up, and if they don't do that, they'll learn to play the song and they'll always kind of get tripped up there. They don't stop and get that another 50 extra reps, or something new maybe if I'm teaching them. And I guess I skipped one step, which might be the first one, is I haven't played through the chord progression of the song. With a simple roll, which for a guitar player would mean just strumming through the chords, but on a banjo might just pick through the chords in a steady roll or combination of rolls, it's depending on how far along you were, and just so that you know where the beginning of the song ends and where it stops. And the other thing that's great about that is that if they lose their place in the tablature, which everybody does, we're not robots. You can't get that 100%.
Right.
They just can fall back on picking the chord or staying on the chord and picking steady,
Yeah, that was the part where they were, That was the part that I thought was really cool about your approach, is you teach them to roll through the chords first, so that later when we're starting to learn the arrangement of the song, if they were trying to play that at a jam, they could always fall back on that roll if they got lost. So I thought that was a good idea.
Well, that's exactly what I did. That's how I learned to play. I learned, 3 of the, basic Scruggs picking patterns. and I learned, a little bit of Cripple Creek, a little bit of Cumberland Gap, just like everybody.
Yeah.
And then I learned the chords, and then my friend played the guitar, so I would just follow his chords and pick along. And then I learned later, started to build on that and get better technique and be able to put more emphasis on the melody and all those things. But before I really could think about, because accenting the melody on the banjo is very difficult too. You have to have pretty good control of your picking to be able to use the dynamics to hit one note harder than the other and fill, all that stuff. But I don't think that's the first thing you learn. You have to learn to pick steady and through a chord progression and understand the sort of get the feeling of the pocket and the rhythm of it.
Yeah.
And then once you've done that, then you always have that to fall back on. So you sort of have a baseline of picking and following along. And then you can start to make things more complicated or make things more perfected, or whether it be a melody or emphasis or dynamics or any of that stuff.
Yeah.
The other thing I would teach students is to be able to pick loud and pick soft, have a dynamic range that you're playing.
Right.
A lot of guys don't do that, and that's a real important part of banjo playing. It's a bit of a frustration, really, as a banjo, because maybe it's just because I'm polite, I don't know, but I always like to blend. So if I'm playing with musicians that aren't playing very loud, I play softer, but I can.
Sure.
But you really, as a banjo player, it is really fun to be in a band that really punches it,
Mm-hmm.
because you really can get a lot of the best tone out of your banjo when you're really digging in to it.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but you got to have a dynamic range to blend. You can't show up and just start playing loud all the time.
Right. Yeah.
But you got to fit in. So, I played with, I was doing a workshop and I got up on stage with Don Rigsby and his band. I was like, holy cow, these guys are just, the banjo player can play as loud as you want. They never drowned out their vocals. You know what I mean? They were such strong singers.
Right.
You could, and that's not always the case, that, if you use PA, you can dig in and, play and get the right tone from playing harder.
Yeah.
But, that's all part of it. I feel like I can get good tone without certainly don't want to overplay ever, but,
Well, you have that idea of dynamics in relation to what everybody else in the band is doing, but then you also have dynamics in relation to the notes that are coming out in your roll, where you kind of make the melody note pop out a little bit more, or you make certain notes a little louder to create some kind of a groove,
Sure. But that's something to be honest, of course, maybe it wasn't a big priority for me, but it was something I developed later. A lot of the ways I developed that was I started playing solo and also making these banjo songbooks, because I'd take some songs that weren't necessarily bluegrass songs and play the melody.
Uh-huh.
Even just a simple song like When the Saints Go Marching In. I started to really learn how to emphasize the melody notes.
Mm-hmm.
And how to and just because I was playing by myself and I really needed to carry the melody even more. Or sometimes your role in a bluegrass band is it's certainly to play the melody, but you have other instruments and vocals to establish it. So maybe you can leave out some of the responsibility, or at least the melody notes, and default to rhythmic picking, because your function is to really drive the band, the rhythm of your playing,
Mm-hmm.
So, but when you're playing by yourself or doing solo shows and doing songbooks, and I felt like I kept getting better and better at doing that, and playing like patriotic medleys or Christmas songs and songs like they're not traditionally on the banjo, but you're really got to play the melody.
Yeah.
Fit that in and still keep the rhythm of the rhythm of the banjo. But that's another thing I would teach, Dan. I would say that your primary responsibility as a banjo player is to produce a rhythm.
Mm-hmm.
And then you drop the melody into the rhythm. You don't play the melody and then try to somehow wrap the rhythm around the melody. You play the rhythm and then you drop the melody into it.
That's a really good thing to think about. Yeah. I think most people, especially beginners, do it the other way around,
Well, that would be sort of the question. You pick up the banjo, even if you're new, for instance, or anybody for that matter, you want to play a melody. But the first thing you really have to do is learn to play a rhythm. I think that's why clawhammer sometimes is considered a little bit easier to catch on to, because the first thing you do with clawhammer is you learn how to make that bumpity-bump kind of rhythmic thing, and then you start dropping the melody into it. So I guess in three-finger style, it's difficult because you're primarily playing in 4/4 time with three fingers. So
right.
That's another thing that students are learning really wrestle with where the downbeat is, and they start to, if they learn as one of the picking rolls, it's the thumb index, thumb middle, where the thumb is the downbeat. Every other downbeat comes down.
Yeah.
And if they're not careful, they'll just assume that the thumb is the downbeat always.
Right.
And then when you start to play some of these forward rolls and other rolls, the other, if you exit the thumb as the downbeat, then it just starts to sound like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Mm-hmm. It says 1, 2, 3, 4.
Right.
Something like that.
Yeah, sure.
So that's a lot of what you teach when you teach banjo, is helping them understand where the time is. And I like to teach a lot on building skill, pushing yourself and learning to relax when you play.
Yeah.
Because that's key. If you're not relaxed when you play the banjo, things kind of go wrong.
Yeah, and I think
some instruments, a guitar and a fiddle, I think even, and they just the strumming motion leads to good breathing. You kind of strum and breathe thing. But the banjo, if you start thinking too hard and you're picking with your fingers in a small space, it's really easy to start holding your breath. If you're like going, oh, am I going to get this right? Nope, next, or this or that. So that also relates back to that steady picking, so that you have the breathing is, in time, and you're breathing with the instrument, and then adding the melody or whatever the difficult thing is within the context of the rhythm that you're playing.
Yeah. And you have, we talked about the books, and on your website, people should go to the website, banjoteacher.com, and there's a section for books, CDs, and DVDs, and there's lots of them on there. You've done a lot of different transcriptions and a lot of topical books. You've done some books for Mel Bay, and you've done a lot of DVDs, and all that stuff is available on your website. Talk about when you started doing the camps and teaching group workshops, and talk about some of that stuff that you've done over the years.
Okay. Well, I started doing that probably around 2002 or 2003.
Okay.
And that was an awesome opportunity for me to travel too. Mm-hmm. And I went to Europe and taught. And then I played in a Canadian, well, let me see if I don't know. People are interested, but I taught at the Maryland Banjo Academy, which Banjo Newsletter put on. So I got sort of a sense of these camps.
Okay.
And that was really great, and great experience. And there was a lot of other good banjo players there. And of course, I got to play with some of the people that I'd been listening to on record, because there were other well-known players there. And then I started to travel, and one of the things I did that just jumps out is we started a banjo camp in Australia. That was in like 2007 with a guy named Peter Nyhusen, and I did that 7 years, and that was a lot of fun. And then I started a banjo camp in Nova Scotia, and I did that for quite a while, and we brought up the first year I did it, I brought Bill Keith up, and that was a big deal for the people up there to get a chance to meet him and hear him play. And then Tom Adams came up one year, and that was there's a lot of bluegrass interest up in that Maritimes up there.
Okay.
And then I started, but in 2003 or 4, I started the Banjo Cruise, which I just thought that would be really fun, and I hired a bunch of instructors, and frankly I was really concerned. It was a little bit of a financial risk, because I hired a bunch of instructors. I didn't know if anybody was going to come, but we ended up getting more students than we could really handle. So Well, just because it's a cruise ship.
Yeah.
So we were like behind the scenes, fighting with a disco group, for the room to teach Scruggs style. It's like, but anyway, so I developed that. So I'm on like my 18th annual, but I haven't done it the last 2 years because of the pandemic.
Right.
The last one I did was right before it, like the February before the March when that pandemic really hurt. I guess it hit was it 2019, I guess. And I really could have done one this year, but it requires a year ahead of time planning. So by the time I realized I should be doing one, it was a little late to plan it. So I'm going to do it next year.
Okay, so you're picking it back up in 2024?
Yeah.
And is it just banjo these days? Because I know I went on a couple of those cruises with you and taught guitar. Are you including guitar still, or is it just banjo?
I'm just doing banjo now.
Okay.
Frankly, I keep it, somewhat easy to manage just because of how much trouble it is for convention space sometimes.
Yeah.
But I've been doing it long enough. I understand which is the best ship for it, and how to do it. But the last few times I've done just banjo, and I'll have somewhere around 15 students.
Okay.
10 to 15.
And do you hire other teachers to come along and help you out?
I haven't done that. But in the past I have. I had Jens Kruger come on one year, and
I think one of the years I did at Murphy Henry, I think you was there.
Yeah, I had Murphy 1 year, and then of course you and Brad Davis, which you guys are great.
Yeah,
that was really fun that year, and I got to play with Brad, which I felt like I fitted really good with him. I really like his playing.
Yeah,
and so that was It's but we were doing the banjo and guitar, but I gotta be honest, I just wasn't, because I'm in the sort of the banjo business and my customer base is banjo related. I wasn't really getting the word out, so I wasn't really getting very many guitar students.
I see.
I could revisit that, but I think if I was going to revisit that, I'd have to revisit it some more with you, so you could, because you have a little more of a reach in that area.
And so you got the cruise going. You've been doing that a long time. You're going to pick that back up in 2024. And you also have the Banjo Safari. Is that still going on?
No, but that I did 2 of those. That was amazing. That was what a great thing. But I did just quickly explain it. But someone that had been learning from me, from my books or online lessons, I guess maybe because he'd seen the banjo cruise, he just called me up and he said, "Well, what do you think about having a banjo safari? Combining it with a photo safari in Africa?" And I'm like, "Let me think about that." Yes. I was like, "Of course," but I said, as long as we could get enough students, And so we just kind of worked out and we advertised and we got enough students to make it viable. But the fellow that puts it on, his wife is South African and he's a professional photographer, and so they like to go there and visit with her family, and he's always he probably met her when he was over there doing safaris and photo safaris. So he's a real expert at it, and he also learned how to play banjo.
Okay.
So that's how it happened, and then later I introduced Steve Kaufman to it.
Oh,
so
I see.
Steve's done a few of them.
Yeah.
And I don't really know. I've kind of lost touch with him a little bit, but I know, I gave him a few references and I think he was able to get a few more students with the guitar,
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't, as far as the safaris aren't cheap, but the particular one was, I would call it pretty reasonable, but it's still not, for what you're getting and what they normally cost, but it's still not something that just anybody can do, or would do.
Yeah. And so, besides that stuff, are you still doing the St. Pete Banjo Camp?
Well, I'm giving a workshop in St. Pete. It's not really sort of a big organized thing, but I'm doing a workshop on February 11th here in St. Pete over at a fellow's house that's done house concerts and workshops before.
Okay, so it's just a small thing?
So I'm going to do a workshop and then do a house concert at night.
I see.
My solo. So, yeah.
Now, is that going to be something you do on a regular basis, or is it just one-time thing?
I think it'd be a good idea for me to do it at least once a winter. I spend the winters mostly I really live year-round in Florida, but my mom lives in New Hampshire, and I bought a little cottage at this Christian campground up there, and I've been spending summers up there.
Okay.
And so, I don't know. I guess I'm sort of a reverse snowbird. I just kind of get out of here in the summer, but
yeah.
But I've done some teaching up there, and I should do some more. I really should start that Nova Scotia banjo camp again. And I'm getting a bit older. I'm winding down a little bit, but I would like to get out and start, teaching and playing more.
Yeah.
It's partially the pandemic. I think we're all trying to learn how to be normal again.
Yeah. I think
I don't know.
Things are slowly coming back, and yeah. You talked earlier about Let's Kick It, this record you did with Blue Highway. Can we play folks a cut off of that? Like maybe your original tune, Roundhouse?
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah. I did the CD with Blue Highway, which is a great, basically borrowed Jason's band, I guess, but we cut it in 2 days. We cut all the bass tracks for him, and I did a lot of more straight ahead bluegrass stuff, Bill Monroe and that kind of thing. And it's really fun. One of the songs on there, the bass player sings Little Maggie, and I just asked him, I said, well, what about doing the song Little Maggie? And they said, well, we've never recorded that before, but we do it all the time. It's our encore song.
Oh. So
when we cut the song, he nailed it in one track, playing bass and vocal.
Wow.
And we did one take.
What year did that come out?
What's that?
What year did that come out? Let's Kick It.
2009.
2009. Okay.
And Pine Castle, I just self-produced it, and then Pine Castle leased it from me, so it's on Pine Castle Records.
Okay.
And I've got it. And then the CD I did that was a big accomplishment for me was when I had a relationship with the Riders in the Sky, because they used to come to Tucson a lot, and the group I was in opened for them several times. And it seems like I was always bumping into those guys.
Okay.
Like at the Harvest Festival or something. And so I remember bumping into them with the Y, working out too. And I always looked up to that. I said, these guys are on the road all the time. That's how they do it. They exercise in every town,
Yeah.
But anyhow, so I did this record called Blazing the West, and from living in Tucson, we played a lot of Western swing and a lot of, sometimes we'd have to show up as bluegrass / Western.
Uh-huh.
To really, because that's what, if we played anything that was kind of corporate or anything. Anyway, I learned how to play banjo and Western swing stuff. I was pretty comfortable with that.
Okay.
And anyway, I did the CD with Riders in the Sky, and then I added a bunch of well-known bluegrass players, Tim O'Brien, and some of my old friends from Arizona, Mike Bob and Butch Baldessari, and that gang. And that was really fun. And that's on Pine Castle, too. Oh, okay. I self-produced that first, but then they picked that up.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and hear that. Yeah. This is Roundhouse, one of Ross's original tunes from his record with Blue Highway called Let's Kick It. Here we go. So Ross, I think around the time I first met you years ago, you were traveling a lot, just doing sort of localized workshops, weren't you? Like you'd advertise in a certain area where some of the people that were learning from your books or videos or online, and you do something in a certain town, and people would come in like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I did some in Texas, and just started going on these little road trips. Indiana. Did one in Michigan, and I did at the time. I had someone that was helping me book and get the word out.
I see.
That really helped a lot too.
Yeah.
And frankly, it wasn't quite as many people doing it then.
Right.
Too. So it was pretty viable that way. Although I don't see a reason why. I mean, I did a workshop not long ago at Bill's Picking Parlor up in Columbia, South Carolina. And I probably had 25 students. It was really probably too many. Yeah, I'd probably be out there more if I had a little bit more of a machine for organizing them.
Yeah, I see. Okay.
But
now, also something we hadn't mentioned this band X Train that you were in. Can you talk about that band and the guys you were playing with there?
Okay. Well, I formed that band actually to bring with me to go to Australia because first time I went to Australia, I went solo. And the next year I went and I brought the band I played with from Canada, which I played with them for 7 years, and we traveled all over the place. But then X Train I put together. We played at the Tucson Bluegrass Festival. It was with Peter McLaughlin and Mark Miracle, and then Bob Denoncourt, who's an old friend of mine who I met that used to play bass for Don Stover and Joe Val way back in the day, and I thought that was pretty cool. And he's an old friend, and so we went over to Australia. Well, we played a couple of festivals, and then when we went to Australia, we needed a CD to sell while we were over there because the particular festival that we were playing at, because they were nonprofit, they were only allowed to pay our expenses.
Okay.
But they bought CDs over there, so we needed a CD.
Huh.
And so we just made a live CD out of the festival we played at. Came out pretty good. I mean, the live stuff is fine. I mean, we all played pretty good, so maybe you think that why would I ever go in the studio again with these live CDs? It is so much trouble to make CDs sometimes, but you fuss over them too much,
Yeah.
And anyhow, so that's X Train. So we did that a couple of times. We went to Australia and then New Zealand too. I set up a tour in New Zealand, which was really fun. And then I also played. I'd go out and play with them in Arizona and California. Actually, that's right. I played a festival in California that you were at. Remember that?
Yeah. You guys did the live record, Live and Kicking It, and then you did another record, Every Man for Himself.
Yeah. And that one was the Every Man for Himself. Actually, we did 2 live ones. One was live in Australia. After we went there, we put together recordings of some of the places we played. But then the Every Man for Himself was a compilation of us taking songs from our different albums that we played on, the different members of the band.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
And then you did a concert DVD with X Train as well, right?
Yeah. And really, X Train is a band now. Mm-hmm. It wasn't at the time, or maybe it was. I don't know. I'm not sure if it was or not, but it's a band called the Sonoran Dogs.
Yeah. Which
is Peter, Mark, and another bass player and another banjo player. But it's I can't remember if they. I don't think they were working that much as the Sonoran Dogs at the time. And then we played together. And then, of course, I don't live in Arizona, so. And they had a good banjo player, Tyler, and another bass player that's from Tucson that I play with a lot too. that plays in that band, but lives closer to them than Bob does.
Okay.
You know, he also plays the upright bass more, which they wanted.
I see.
Bob plays one of the stick basses.
Uh-huh.
Something like that. I don't know. It was I don't know what it was. Probably more of a logistical thing, though.
Yeah.
And so it's well, there you have the Sonora Dogs, and they've done some CDs and stuff.
Yeah, they're good. I've seen them play.
Yeah, so X Train is basically Sonora Dogs with a different bass player and different banjo player.
I got it. Okay. Now, one thing I want to mention to everybody is on your website, banjoteacher.com, we've talked about the books and the CDs and the DVDs, and, you could go on here and find out about whatever cruises or workshops that Ross is doing, but also it's kind of like a one-stop shop for banjo players because you have supplies like picks and straps and all that kind of stuff. You also have, you also sell banjos, for a lot of different kinds of banjos. Can you talk a little bit about what you pushing these days as far as the banjos?
Sure. Well, I started with a couple of books, and then we started selling supplies, and then we started selling banjos.
Mm-hmm.
And selling banjos is a lot of what I do now.
Okay.
And I demonstrate banjos on my website. I've got quite a few videos. So here's the Recording King RK36, and I might talk about it and stuff. And when I first started selling banjos, I was wondering, like, how are we going to ship these? Or what if something happens to them? Or what if they don't like it? Or this kind of thing. I just didn't know how that was going to work. This is back in, before everybody was doing it. And but it's really worked out good. The instruments I sell, they exceed the expectations of the customer. So, very rarely is anybody ever disappointed. They usually feel as though they got a really good value. I would say they do feel as though they are, and they do get a really good value. So, and then the other thing is we set them up, and I thought, well, this is going to be a nightmare if they get it and it doesn't work,
Yeah.
Then what am I going to do? I have to send it back.
Yeah.
Oh, that's gonna, this won't work. So I just add an extra level of making sure that doesn't happen by setting them up.
Ah.
And I include things and everything I do. I mean, a good reason if you're, not to make this a sales pitch, but a good reason would be to buy from us is that I've got a teacher's perspective. I students used to come to my house and they'd show up with something that, the fifth string pegs hanging off, and it's like way out of tune, whatever it might be, or an instrument that, well, you're gonna have to take this in and get worked on, before you can take lessons.
Okay.
Or so I just have a perspective. That's what I envision. I send a banjo to somebody. I envision what their first banjo lesson is going to be like. We install capo spikes, which for the fifth string.
Oh,
and,
great.
None of these other places do, or not. I would say I take that back. They're just talking freely, exaggerating, but a lot of places don't.
Yeah.
And most places don't, unless they're banjo specific. And they, if you get very far into this thing, and even when you just practice at home, you really need to be able to capo fifth string.
Yeah.
Banjo, I couldn't even play a show without the capo spikes. So we offer that, and then of course I explain why they might need them. It's not something we make any money off of. More expensive ones, I pay for it.
Yeah.
I pay my guy to put them on, and I don't charge for it.
Okay.
It's just another way I can say my service has got more than someone else's,
Uh-huh.
that type of thing. But one thing, I wrote a book called The Banjo Encyclopedia for Mel Bay. I should really mention that because that's like my most complete book. I wrote that. It's like 240 pages.
Okay.
And that's I got the contract to do that. It took me a while to get it done, but because I knew I was going to have to kind of write it all at once, so I finally found a place and sequestered myself and wrote, or at least the outline for everything, to the point where I only had to edit and perfect it in about 13 days straight.
Mm-hmm.
I just spent like all day long writing this book. So
wow,
that's my sort of my biggest book. And then some of the DVDs I like the best are the ones that I've got one on Playing by Ear, which talks about some of the stuff that we were talking about earlier, where learning how to play without tablature. It's not necessarily learning to play only by ear, but it's learning how to sort of, basically the part where I go to do these workshops that students are missing right now. It's not understanding the chord progression and picking through the chords and stuff. And then a how to practice DVD was one that I talk a lot about how to effectively learn a song from tablature without just sight reading it.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. So I have I have some song books and stuff, but I have some specific technique ones too.
Yeah.
That I think, And, my lessons aren't free, because it's not YouTube, I suppose, but they're reasonable, and you can get discounts if you get more than one book. And I have a member site that has a ton of material on it, where you pay like one fee and then you have access to it, and it's really more material than anyone can get to, but it's a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Because I've worked hard,
Well, like I said,
put a lot into it.
I think your website, you've been doing it for over 20 years on the web, and I think you pretty much have like I said, a one-stop shop for banjo players at banjoteacher.com, where you have all the supplies, all the all the gear, you can have the banjos that you set up for folks. You have the online streaming lesson kind of thing. You have the books and CDs and DVDs, and also camps and workshops. So anybody out there that plays banjo, you need to go check out Ross's website, and there's lots and lots of stuff on there that we don't have time to talk about specifics as far as his books and DVDs, but pretty much everything you want to be interested in as a banjo player, you can find at whatever level you're at, beginning, intermediate, or advanced. I think you kind of have it all for folks, Ross.
Thanks. I was just going to say that you can call me too. I mean, I answer the phone.
Okay.
and people maybe it's just the way website stores are. It might look like it's still a small business. I mean, I have people that work for me, but I'm the one that does all the customer service. So if you call me up and say, I'm just thinking of learning how to play the banjo, should I play claw hammer or should I play three finger? I answer the phone and answer questions like that.
Okay.
So call me,
Yeah, and then on the website,
know?
You also have a resources page. You have a Ask Ross. You have banjo reviews. You have banjo demos. You have a banjo blog. You have a banjo instructor list, which is great for folks that are looking for a private teacher. You kind of have a lot of resources on there as well.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Dan. I appreciate the attention and making me feel important and all that. And I appreciate that.
Yeah, well, we got to let folks know where they can learn how to play bluegrass music so it will continue into the future.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm here to help too.
Yeah.
So.
All right, man. Well, I tell you what, we're about out of time, but as we're leaving the podcast here, can we play another cut from your Let's Kick It CD? Maybe that Old Dangerfield. That seems like it was popular for you off of that record.
That would be great.
All right. Well, Ross, thanks so much for being with us here today. Everybody that's listening, if you play the banjo, check out banjoteacher.com. If you don't play the banjo, send your banjo playing friends there, or go there and learn how to play the banjo. And Ross will help you with anything you need. So
thank you again.
Yeah, thanks, Ross. So here we go. We're going to go out with Ross and the guys playing Old Dangerfield from his Let's Kick It CD. Here we go.